on this episode of Inspiration Nation, we have some phenomenal news. Our friends over at Weld Wheels finally sent out our wheels and got us set up for the Conquest. These babies are awesome. I mean, they're behind the banner, but I mean, you want to see them now, or do you want to wait until the end and see them on? I can't take it no more. You ready? Woo! This is a set of 18 by 10.5 in the front and 18 by 11 in the rear, running a set of Falcon tires, 315 30/18s, and yeah, these are one-off spec S77 Weld wheels, phenomenal looking. But we got a problem. They're a little bit too big for the factory body. So you guys know what that means? Wide body time. That's right. This episode we are going to be cutting the factory wide body on the Conquest so that we can fit these monster babies on the car. So with that being said, choppy time. We got to see just how far we got to pull these fenders out. So out with the old, in with the new, and we're going to try this right here. Bam! That was easy. Now to give you an idea, it sticks out pretty far, and I'm almost certain that it's going to want to hit the inside of the, oh yeah. So we've got a clearance, the back firewall wheel well area, and oh yeah, it's hitting up here too. So we've definitely got to wide body it, and we've definitely got to do some cutting on the inside. The front, the rear, we're probably just going to be able to wide body it because, you know, we don't turn. There's no rear steer back there. So that one, we'll get to that one. Let's start right here first. We know we're going to have to wide body it. We know the wheel hits the fender, but we've got to start on the inside and make sure we get the clearance on the chassis of the car to make sure that we get all the steering angle that we can possibly get out of these giant 315 30s. Whoops. Now that we got the fender off, let's see how much clearance we got. Ooh, I'd say we're hitting pretty good. All right, let's check the front. Oh yeah, and that steering angle is trash. So we got to do a lot of cutting here and here. Now it's time to turn things over to our trusty Bad Dog Tools cutoff wheel. And remember, safety first. Now we've got it filleted off to where we can start dollying it and hammering it back, but where the outer rocker panel skin and the inner firewall area tie together, I don't want to cut that. And how it comes together, what I'm going to do is take and dolly it in and then roll it over so that I can weld it, and it'll actually make this corner even stronger than it is now, and it'll give us our clearance. And with that being said, we can then dolly all this back and then weld it on the seam and make sure we have a good strong bond between our hinge pillar panel and our inner fender / firewall panel. I know this looks bad, but you've got to trust the process. So we're actually going to have to be taking this outer panel all the way back out to about there, which is almost even with this bead roll in the factory stuff. And that way we can then, we have to just take this panel, that way this panel can just be pushed back and welded in. Now we've got it dollied back far enough, it's time to start stitch welding the seam here so that we can actually finish dollying the inside. But we got to kind of attach the inner panel to the outer panel so that it'll actually pull and do exactly the way we want. But it's looking really good so far. That's what we're looking for. Good clearance. Now that we've got the front, time to whack out the, Now that we've got the back clearing the tire, it's time to start cutting out the front. We've got to take all the way out to this body line here. Now comes the fun part. You get to actually cut a perfectly good, kind of hard to find fender. And how we're gonna do that is we're gonna end up doing a drill hole here so that we can start our cut. And we're gonna run all the way down to here, to the end of the body line. And then we've gotta cut it here. And then we put the wheel on and pull it out to see how far out we need it to start making all the panels. Eventually we're gonna have to cut it under here and cut it down here so that you can control your door gaps and get all your angles right. But it starts with the long cut and the short cut. So now what you're going to want to do is, now that you've got it cut, you got to start massaging it so when it comes out there's not going to be a kink in it. So you kind of just give it a little by hand because you know it's going to come out pretty far. Now this is a part that you really have to take your time on, and you kind of want to limit the amount of dollying that you have to do. Now what you want to measure is how big a gap you're going to have here whenever you get it out as far as you want. And it's looking like we are going to have about an inch gap. So we're going to go and cut a 1-inch strip of sheet metal for right here. We get it pulled out and tacked into place. Make sure everything, all our lines and everything are good. And then we can make a paper template for the top, cut that out and start tack welding it in. One-inch piece. Now that we have our 1-inch piece and it's brought the fender out as far as we want and we have a nice bend, this is a really nice clean radius, we're going to take a piece of, this is like painter's masking paper, we're going to bring it up to the edge of the fender, tape it in place, and then I'm going to come here. Use your hand, do a nice little creasy through there. Now I need to make the sheet metal, need to get it some shape. So we're going to use the plenishing hammer in a way that it's probably not designed to use, but it works. So what we're going to do is give it a roll this way. And when I give it the roll that way, it actually gives it a slight arc this way. So it's kind of fun to play with because I've never been taught how to use this. I'm just kind of winging it. We interrupt this time lapse to tell you, make sure you space out your welds and take your time and do not get overzealous and weld it all at once. It will make your panel do the worm, and you definitely don't want it to do that. Now that we have the wide body roughly over the wheel cut all and tacked in, it's time to cut the bottom of the fender so we can get our bottom mounting point, and we can start prepping to give us our relief cut up the back of the fender so that we can create a better door gap, because right now the way the fender kicked out, it lays over the door gap. So we got to cut the bottom off, bolt it to the car, and then we'll have to make a triangular piece here and reinforce it with a little round bar just to make it stronger. And yeah. Now this piece will get bolted to the bottom of the car, and that way we can start trimming it out for our wheel clearance and attach it back to the fender. you got your relief cut. You can close your gap up, tack it where all your body lines line up. Open the door. Woo! So now that we've got it all tacked in, we got our door gap and everything, it's time to get this bottom mounted, trimmed so that it'll miss the giant tires. And how we're going to do that is we got this 1/4 inch round bar, and we're going to bend it roughly like this, and it'll be mounted in here and tie it to the outside of this fender, and it'll help support the fender, and it'll give us a nice rounded edge right back here. So if something ever does happen, the tire does kind of hit it, it's a lot stronger than just a flat bent piece of metal or what have you. So all right, now that we have the front done, you can imagine just rinse and repeat on the other side. It's time to move to the back. It don't stick out quite as much because the back end of the Conquest is wider than the front end from the factory. So we only have to bring this one out about 1.5 inches past factory versus the 2.5 past factory here. First things first, we're gonna get the fender cut out and see and get it to a point of where it moves. And then I can bolt the tire on, pull it out, and get my measurements and start tacking it together. This one's gonna be pretty much the same principle. We're gonna cut it across the top of the body line there. And then we've gotta make our relief cut for the expansion here. And we're gonna have to cut underneath the rocker panel so that it'll allow it to come out. The only difference in this one is we got to cut the inner wheel well. Now that is going to be a challenge because you have this support in here. So we're going to have to cut it right on this line all the way around. When the cut line comes down to here, we're going to have to swizzle it over and then down to the cut line across the bottom of the rocker. And it'll be pretty much the same thing. We'll follow this cut line all the way down here so that we can pull it out, and then we'll just add in a strip of metal to fill in the panel and grind it smooth. We're not really worried about any rear clearance on the wheels because when we had Weld build our custom wheels, we had them run the same factory offset as the rear wheels. 11.5 inch wheel, 5 inch backspace. We've got our tape lines for where we're going to be cutting. The only challenge with this one is going to be the fuel door. We're actually going to have to cut down inside the pocket for the fuel door and pull it out. Now we will be shaving the fuel door because if you've seen in the previous video, we have a fuel cell, and as of right now, we're just gonna put fuel in the fuel cell and I'll build a filler neck later because I'm not really sure where I want it to come out at. I know I didn't want it to come out in the quarter panel because that's sponsor real estate right there. We've already got a giant Weld Wheels sticker ready to go. Now the lower rocker is gonna be a little bit tricky because how the rocker actually passes the door. I kind of want to give it about 1.25 inches of flat before I cut my relief mark here and take the wedge out to accommodate for the quarter panel being pulled out, which is not really going to be that big. Probably just the width of a cutoff wheel here because we have so much length here. It don't really, by the time it gets out, plus we're only going about 1.5 inches out on the rear wheel. So it should be fun, but I'm still going to mark 1.5 inches back from this body line right here. And then that'll be where we make our plunge cut with our cutoff wheel for when we cut up to make sure we got our door gap proper. We have everything cut loose. I did have to come in on the body line here, and I had to give some relief cuts on the inside of the lip here to get it where it rolled nicely. It's kind of a pain in the butt to shape this one where you get a nice arc because of the way it's still attached to the inner fender well in there, but we're going to get around that. Slow and steady wins the race. We still have a little bit of a kink up here, but I'll be able to dolly that out before we tack weld it all in. But we're pulling it out and it's looking like just a hair over 1/2 inch. Now we just transfer it to sheet metal, cut it out, and start the plenishing hammer process to get our curve happening. We do some fine tuning with the grinder and, you know, shaving and trimming to make sure the piece fits perfect. And then you just go and slowly tack it all together. This ties everything together on the top, which gives you your nice body line. Then you can move down to your other lower points and getting them pulled out, and if you have to add a little piece or what have you there. So it's a slow, tedious process, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it in the end. See, we try our best, and then we grind the rest. Alright guys, I'm sorry I haven't done much filming of welding inside of the wheel well, because honestly, it's a pain in the butt and I dread it. This is the worst part of the whole project because you're welding over your head. It is terrible. But we basically, when we pulled the fender out, it created roughly an inch and a quarter, inch and a half gap all the way around. I just laid a piece of 2-inch masking tape on the lip, used my finger to mark the lines and trace the lines with a Sharpie, and just kind of worked its way all the way around, tack welding as I go and dollying to get the smooth transition. And there we go. All of the wide body is pretty much complete. I've had to add a little bit in there. It'll look better in the end. We filled in the fuel door. Yeah, it was a lot involved. Now the other side is pretty much the same, just a lot less involved because we're not tackling that evil fuel door right there. All right, now a recap. I'm going to give you a quick explanation on where to cut your Conquest if you're going to try to mimic this particular wide body. So here you go. This is our basic passenger side rear quarter panel. You got your upper, this would be considered the wide body. Then you have a faint body line, and then you've got the hard body line, right? Tail light, door, basic principle. Red is cut lines. Now you got to be real specific on these cut lines. So you're going to first cut from here to here. You're going to do a cut right on the top edge of the lip. So as the fender rolls over, right on the top, as it starts to flatten out, that's where you want to take it. Then you're going to cut it right through here, right down the center of the wheel well. Then you're going to have to make a cut on this exact body line. You're going to cut right on that body line. All right. Then you've got to come, let's see, that one. You're going to end up cutting, don't connect these two cuts. You want to keep them about a 1/4 inch apart. You're going to cut down roughly a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch away from the edge of the door. And you're going to want to take your cutoff wheel and you're going to want to make it a little wider of a cut through the middle portion, because as it swells out in the middle, when you pull the panel out, it's going to overlap more there than at the top or bottom. And so you're going to want to stop it right before it gets to the bottom rocker panel line that runs through here. There's a hard body line where the rocker panel kicks out. Then you're going to want to do the same cut from this corner almost to the edge, give it about a 1/4 inch or so, straight off the bottom of the rocker panel. Now you're going to also want to pie cut this one. So it's going to be a little bit of a wedge near the outside, so when you pull it, it'll give you a nice run and then kick out for the wheel well. It'll look really nice. And that's all your cuts on the outside of the panel. Now, if you're going to go to the inside, excuse my artistic abilities, it's kind of hard to draw, but this is looking from the ground straight up at the bottom of the wheelhouse area. This would be your door area, and this would be your rear dogleg tail light pocket area. And right here would be your coilover setup, right? So what you're going to want to do is you're going to have to cut from roughly, there's a little body line through here. You're going to want to cut all the way up and around and into the rocker panel, or around into the wheel well. And then you're going to kind of swoop it around and up. And there's, if you notice in your wheel well, there's like a body line. You want to cut right around that body line area so it makes it easier to weld back together. And this one's going to loop all the way around to the same thing here. And then you're going to want to cut all the way up the rocker panel underneath the door area to where this original pie cut is. So once you get to that cut, that gives you your pivot point, right? You can cut that one all the way loose. Just make sure you're leaving a little gap still attached here, a little gap still attached here and here. All right, and you can do a little one right here, because you don't want to cut the panel all the way off and it fall on the floor. You still want it to be hanging, that way your body lines line up. Now, you're going to also take, and you got to connect this cut to this cut. So again, this is the wheel well opening looking from the ground up. and you've already cut the outer panel. Now you want to catch it and run it to the inside of this panel, to this line, cut line here. This will allow this piece to be loose, and this cut here, because you're going to have the cut through here, which is going to end up coming somewhere through here, right? And you got to do this one because the way the body puckers, it will end up warping really bad, and you won't be able to get this bottom structure to come out. So you got to separate. So this panel will be a loose flappy section here. This panel will be a loose flappy section, and this panel will be a loose flappy section. Then when you pull the panels apart, for my particular coverage, to clear the 11-inch wheels with the 5-inch backspace, we had to add a 1-inch strip here. And once you add that 1-inch strip there, it will pull it out close enough to where you can lay your cardboard or paper template up here when it opens this gap up. And you'll want to lay it, and I used the plenishing hammer around it, so mine actually overlapped a little bit up here, because if you pull it out so much and you maintain the same cut line, your quarter or your flare will be really flat. So you kind of want to bring it up a little bit so that it rolls up into the quarter, and it gives a little bit more of an OE look than just a bam shelf. So that's pretty much in a nutshell your cut lines. I hope I didn't confuse you too much, but to fit 11.5-inch or 11-inch wheels with 3 15/30 tires, you gotta not be scared to cut your car apart. There is some clearancing in the front. Now you basically reverse this for the front fender. It's a whole lot easier. You end up cutting from the headlight area across the same style body line, and then you'll cut down the door. Again, do not connect these cuts, because if you connect the cuts, then the panel falls on the floor, and then you got to hold it there and tack it in. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But yeah, sorry for this little tutorial 5-minute, 6-minute section, but I wanted to clarify everything for everybody and give a big shout out. And that being said, Wes, cue the cinematics of the final product. There you have it, guys. That's how we wide-body the Conquest. Now join us on the next episode where we take it in for some body and paint action. Now we would like to take a second to thank our sponsor, Weld Wheels, for hooking us up with these gorgeous Weld S77s. Without them, this episode would not have happened. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Got to take all the way out to this body line here. I hate all of you. I hate all of you for laughing at me. I have people in the peanut gallery right here. People in the peanut gallery that are laughing because I'm saying whack out, not whack off.